Go on that note, I mean, we've seen EMEA change, and we go into Lijiang Tower, by the way. But I mean, for you, Mox, what do you think? What do you think we're going to see out of these two teams? What meta do you expect to see out of this new patch, out of the live patch?
Well, again, Lijiang is one of those map types where we saw a very diverse meta depending on which map type you started off with, right? Remember, there was a whole thing around Symmetra being a thing on Night Market because teams would actually want to be able to teleport through the choke and into the window of the path, dropping down and then taking a fight there. On Gardens, we always had the whole play around the fact that there's environmental kill potential. So Pharah could be extremely strong if you're able to get out of spawn fast enough with a concussive. But we're not headed to either of those two maps. And that means that it's going to be the Rhine Rush. It's Control Center. Both of these teams are already going to be locking in with that Rhine. We might actually see this Bastion come on through. Bastion is actually something that a lot of teams are turning to because of the amount of damage that you can output. You can channel and control so many of these really closed up spaces, and you put a lot more pressure on the other Reinhardt because that shield is just not going to be able to stay standing.
All right, let's see if both of these teams are going to lock towards this Bastion. Like you mentioned, they TP out of spawn first. Sheercold actually looking like they're going to stay the symmetric composition, going towards that white side room. And already, SXJ with the early pickoff on the opposite side of the Symmetra of Sheercold. And MG with a pretty strong start with his Bastion composition that you mentioned, Mark. They just going to run on forward, but really it was off the back of that pick of SXJ.
And you can see that Sheercold did actually try to stick with the Symmetric to put a little bit more pressure on the Rhine shield with the turret coming up behind Fiomatic, but it's that Bastion who absolutely shreds through Sheercold's defense. And now they've got control of the first point. They can take this fight as slow as they perfectly want. They have a lot of skill potential with seeing the Hanzo swap come through to Sheercold as they're trying to find a first pick. But they have to use the Maywall as the tank code comes out from Yuzo, and look at the amount of damage this Bastion is doing.
Yeah, both lamps forced out on the side of MG and Sheercold. They back off towards the white room. MG just have that Baptiste window. And the fire strike, I think it went through the window as well. And now the Baptiste shooting through it. I mean, that's just too much damage to deal with. MG, yet again, a hold, but they did lose the point this Sheercold, so they will get a little bit of percentage and are going to have to reset real fast after this Lucio dies.
Yeah, you again though, it's MG being able to control the fight entirely. Yes, the flip does come through, but it's only 12%. Sheercold are not able to stall the fight long enough for either Ant Matrix to come out from Sucrax or Kidakomi to come in with that sound barrier and allow them to have a little bit more of that percentage. MG, they're coming in with so many ultimates to attack fight. Fiomatic's going to have to scatter. Hurricane is not close enough to theirs at the moment. So instead of pushing the Dragon Strike to try and push MG off the side lane and into the point, it's a little bit easier to dodge out of the Bastion.
Does split them, and I mean that was a nice right click from Muse onto Theomatic on the opposite side, still spamming to this window. But the Mayo, they want to win this. MG wants to win now, even though they're missing their Reinhardt. They do lose Muse in the background to SXJ, who got that pick off with the Blizzard. But it's a shatter on the front side, and without that Reinhardt, you can't really live. In a canceled or the shatter from Sheercold, they can actually close on this point, and they do so. 63% now for MG to swap back into Sheercold to swap that point. That's a good retake from them.
Muse is going to have this Blizzard put in as well, but Sheercold expended all of the ultimates they had, barring that Blizzard, to be able to find that flip. So as a result, Blizzard's there, but there is no follow-up damage. MG have setup, but they also have skill potential afterwards. So Sheercold have to be very careful how they take this next fight.
And that they do. MG walking towards the main side, trying to look for that shatter now towards white, but Eric is kind of mimicked them on the opposite side, but a nice Maywall into the freeze immediately, but a shatter actually comes out, but it's immediately Baptiste Lamp. But Theo doesn't have theirs because it died so fast. The QRX on the other side in the window on the main. Even though they're down one, they did trade out Hanzo's, so it's an even 4v4. Why would you charge in there? Oh no! Got shot by the Baptiste and the man at the same time. So now Sheercold lose their Reinhardt, their one advantage in this fight, and MG actually flips the point.
Yeah, MG actually play that fight so smartly after they lose Fiomatic. They go for the point contest, Johan jumps at Matrix, and then Yuzo walks into position knowing that Sheercold have to walk into it if they want to contest the flip. And as a result, now MG have control of scope. They try to push away Fiomatic, but the wall isn't actually able to separate the Reinhardt long enough from the team. We're headed into final fight territory. MG have 2 zone controlling ultimates, and Sheer Cold are having to swap onto this Tracer to be able to keep this point in play as long as possible.
Oh my god, how did Eric just get that charge after the nail was so aggressive? But overtime ticks down because the Tracer touched the point. Now Juzo decides to pop that Bastion ultimate, but he's in a very aggressive position. Somehow doesn't get caught out until just about now, but the lamp is popped to save their life as well. And on that point, the Tracer's still trying to contest as well as towards that point, actually, Kate Comey actually kills the Bastion on the opposite side. So now MG, even though they had the advantage, now lost it. However, Kate Comey does die to Yohem on the opposite side. The Lucy a little bit too aggressive. Point towards the Sheer Cold, and the Shatter comes on the opposite side, but the counter Shatter is immediately blocked from Theo. Great job from him to keep them in this fight. Pulse Bomb comes out, but it's Immortality Field, and MG somehow stabilize and hold this point, and it looks like they're going to take round 1 on the Zhang Tower.
Yeah, MG unfortunately had too many ultimates to be able to open up that fight. They were able to control how Sheer Cold entered into it so perfectly. Both with the Blizzard and then with the Bastion, making sure that that choke was entirely blocked. Forcing the Tracer away from the team, had to just keep that point contested as long as possible. So even when ultimates start to come through from the other side, Biomatic is still able to hold strong. Yohem is still not pressured enough because he has had all of that timing with the 2 ultimates that they're able to open up the fight with. The Baptiste is so far away into the backline that Sheer Cold are just not able to push into him. But that was Control Center. That was the Rain Rush. Now we're headed into an entirely different map, an entirely different composition.
All right, Winston coming through on Garden. I mean, you mentioned it, Mox. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if it actually pans out for MG on the opposite side. And Sheer Cold, actually the first ones to reach this bridge to kind of stuff that dive. So they're going to have to make it through that Reinhardt first and onto that Symmetra, and that they do. But Theo taking a ton of damage, giving that Symmetra a ton of charge from this shield towards that point. It's always rough to deal with. A TP comes through, forces that Reaper out of the dojo position, and Sheer Cold doing a great job with his aggressive spot as well on the opposite side on this bridge. They're still getting pushed in on from MG. However, on the opposite side, SXJ takes that position towards the pillar side, and both teams actually go low. Barrick does get healed up on the opposite side. They establish some extra TP to kind of balance behind this dojo, but Juzo on the opposite side with Sojourn finds that opening pick onto the Baptiste, and now you don't have a lot of those main heals. You get hit by that Sojourn up on the opposite side. However, somehow QRX actually finds Theo on the opposite side. However, Eric did get booped off the map, and without your main tank, it's going to be hard to win here, but they do commit the beat drop, gain a lamp to sustain towards this point. They have the Symmetra TP, they have a wall, and they actually commit to use it. Although SSJ finds that kill, they do have the point, and a counter ultimate still available for MG as well, but they just hold on to it. They're actually up in this fight. Now pop that Reinhardt ult, but however, Sucrex finds SXJ. Theo trying to clean things up on this point. A lot of ults committed just for that lost fight, but they do have 34% on the board.
That was the entire point of the fight as well. Even though they knew, okay, potentially we're going to lose this, we're going to throw in everything that we have to sustain and be able to stall. So they've already picked up 34% of that, and now Sheer Cold can come in. They've got the Shadow. They know that MG don't have a Reinhardt to count Eric X, which means that once that Winston bubble's gone, it's a free Shadow. And look at how it's working. MG gets the second! Walks straight past the Winston, finds the potion in the backline, and entirely cancels out any impact from the overclock. Now for MG, it's all about scoring this point for as long as possible.
Yeah, what a recontest. I can't believe they just gave Ericek all that positioning, and now they just get to walk towards the back line of MG, find Yohem on the backside, and just kind of secure the point. However, you know, a lot of stagger comes through with this mobility-based composition. MG can just keep funneling in, just keep staggering that point off. Actually, XSJ, how did they just find QR? Not exactly sure, but now they're going to reset and swap towards that Reinhardt composition, Mox.
Yeah. They have to go for the Rhine Rush because they've seen what happens when you have a Shadow and the other side has nothing to be able to stop it. They're just going to walk straight past you, especially with that Lucio in play, and just smack that hammer into every single person on your team. But MG, they're swapping to the Bastion. They're going to go all the way around this point. They're going to use Yuzo on this Bastion to again try to get out that Reinhardt. He's thinking you don't have ultimate. Pickle can hold himself on this field because they have the confidence through that amp to make an excited strike. But MG already on the point, and that's when the two dangers gone.
Yeah, now that you have this Bastion here on the point, I mean, the beat drop's already committed. You got nothing to sustain here for sheer cold side, besides the fact that Sucrox has been insane on the Baptiste, but he does get melted down. Now Lucio comes out to delay, and Yohem, off the back of him, in some great play from MG, they make it through this point, and they're stacked in terms of ultimates, Monster.
User, by the way, in one fight pulls up 77% of an ultimate. That's how much damage that Bastion was doing. On the other side, Sheer Cold are going to have a Deadeye. They're pretty close to a Shatter and Blizzard of their own. But MG, once again, are going to have Stall. They've got that Sound Barrier coming online. They're going to have the Amp Matrix. This is the position that Sheer Cold needs, an Amp Matrix of their own. And that may work fine, but it doesn't actually work. Instead, MG pushes forward. Amp Matrix and Blizzard combine to catch on to every single member in Sheer Cold, barring Kudikomi, who was stuck in that choke. The Blizzard slows them down. The Amp Matrix guarantees that they go back to spawn the pathway.
And it's so hard to recontest versus this May 2 as well. 90% of the board now going to be going up to 100 in a second for MG. They get Maywold off in the bridge. It doesn't actually cut them fully off. Erikek does take the counter charge, but somebody's going to have to touch this point. There's a Mail here. Incoming basher from Juzzo, who does find Sucross on the backside. They do get to touch the point. In Sheer Cold last second, actually make it work off the back of QRX's 2 kills and Katakomi's trade as well. And they actually find Yoham off the back as well. So it's actually now in Sheer Cold's favor.
Yeah, Sheer Cold's favor, it is the point for them, but this next fight is going to be so close. It is going to come down to which of these Reinhardts is going to find more value with the ultimate. Sheer Cold playing on that point, MG going for the Symmetra so they can all teleport past and onto the point themselves. And Matrix MG is able to find the Shatter, and Theomatic goes down because the Swap makes the highest they can up to the right on the ground, guaranteeing no counter Shatter, and Sheer Cold might just have been able to win Garden.
Wow, how did they pull it out of that situation? It was so tough for them towards that point to recontest, to get that point at 99%, to touch it from Katakomi as well, to actually get that point touch to trigger overtime. I mean, just fantastic work from them. When it looked like they were against the ropes, they somehow made it back. And I mean, this is a little bit replay of that Shatter, imagine from earlier, or at least the Winston jumping on, but SXJ is a standout player for MG as well. But we're going to go to that round 3 Moxie on Night Market. And I think, is it fair to say it still favors MG?
I mean, I wouldn't really say it. It's pretty close. The last time especially Sheer Cold had such good target focus, they knew what they needed to do, right? Erikek makes that be the Reinhardt who shatters first, and that's the riskiest time for Reinhardt, right? Because you're using the shatter, you're hoping that you're going to find the value, and that you're going to leave your team vulnerable in the hopes that you're going to stop the counter shatter, and then the follow-up guarantee when it's not able to find the counter. Sheer Cold, however, already on that one, already on that system, and that's that once again you go on the Bastion, you just use the immortality to get the Bastion close enough, but the turrets are untouched, and Yuzo goes down. The Lambert can use aggressively, they don't have a defense.
Fantastic Baptiste play from Sheer Cold, really off the back of that, and the Symmetra turrets, like you mentioned, and that damage output, because they keep trying to focus down Erikek so fast, they just can't do it on the side of MG. Juzzo just not rotating fast enough to kill that lamp as well, and now they have to recontest versus the Symmetra in all of these turrets. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, they're keeping the Bastion as well, and Sheer Cold now have a little bit more leeway when that Bastion comes on through. You can already see that MG trying to lengthen the distance, so again, user can try and pressure at Erikek, but Sheer Cold have the point to be able to hold behind, and again, that means a lot of natural cover away from this Bastion camp.
Spamming that shield towards the front side, and the Bastion moves in towards that point, but nobody's giving them the positioning in the fire strike window. Perfect time from Erikek and Sucrux to find the opening pick onto Yoham. Now they have no support on the backside, and this is just Reinhardt Baptiste's dominance on the side of Sheer Cold to keep pushing forward like this.
Yeah, Sheer Cold just playing that natural cover so well. No one really engaging in the Bastion until they're ready to make that move. Amplification Matrix into Fire Strike once again, and MG are absolutely cleft in half by the resulting damage. We're again about to cross over into Sheer Cold having over 50% of the point in their control. They're about to come in with a Shatter and a Blizzard. If they start to win these fights off of 2 ultimates alone, they've got this in the bag.
Yeah, oh my god, but QRX does go very low, almost falls, but the Maywall comes out, now forces that Shatter to land as well, but the Maywall, it's huge! It lands into 3 people. The teleporter was there from the Symmetra, so they potentially could have teleported out of that May ultimate, but not fast enough on the backside, though QRX still trying to make something happen. However, it's a little bit too late. They did lose 2 members of their team, and it's very hard to win a 3 versus 5 MG with a nice recontest. However, they have quite a big deficit to come back from here, Mox.
Yeah, that is going to be the problem for MG. Sheer Cold were able to push this point to 81%. They're coming in again with a Blizzard, so MG have to play this really carefully. they can't all group up. They can't just rely on the Bastion being the damage maker, because the Blizzard can immediately puncture this composition and punish them for being so close together. And there it is. Blizzard comes on through. There's the punishment. The lamp tries to save Theomatic, but that target focus coming from Sheer Cold takes it out, and then they move on to the Reinhardt afterwards.
Yeah, they still have both beat drops, however, on the opposite side, but they do lose SXJ, and now without any else on their team, the point's going to flip back to Sheer Cold, and pretty similar ult usage as well. I mean, it's going to be super hard to recontest with just this Bastion ult.
Yeah, they only have the Bastion ultimate. They will have the Blizzard to try and combine it with. The problem is it's going to be final fight. Look at how Sheer Cold is setting themselves up. If a Blizzard comes through, it's going to hit at maximum 2 players, and that means that the Bastion ultimate is damage into the Blizzard.
Here it is, the Bastion close range, and the lamp is there to save the entirety of Sheer Cold, but they still lose off the backside with this May ultimate from SXJ, perfectly timed. It seems like, I mean, obviously, you know, in the past, May ults have been this impactful as well, but it does seem like every time a team has a May ultimate, they just get the fight win. And speaking of which, MG flipped that point.
They play it really smart. They don't use either the Blizzard nor the Bastion to actually push Sheer Cold away or contest them. They push onto point and force Sheer Cold to walk into them to contest that flip. That's when they know the Blizzard's going to hit the most amount of players. That's when the Bastion ultimate has the most devastating follow-up. Sheer Cold, however, going to be swapping. QRXD is going to be going onto that Castle, looking for that flank angle and putting another angle of the doorways that MD now have to worry about. And they're going to counter it by dropping the Amp Matrix and making sure that no one, not even a Castle, does 140 hit damage first up to 25 meters, is going to want to contest that one, Dustin. This is going to be MD pushing Sheer Cold right back into the game.
Yep, I mean, that was a very smart Baptiste window, perfectly timed, but they might have actually gone a little too aggressive here, Moxie, towards that side, which is exactly not what you want, or what you don't want to do against a team like Sheer Cold who can sustain. But they're still towards this point, Mox. 82% left on the board. Theomatic's going to come up on that shadow, but the Mail aggressive from Muse to potentially cut out of position, but no, it's completely negated. MG doing a great job just backing up, getting out of the range of that May ultimate, and that beat drop's still available, and shatters on both sides. Who's going to get off? The Bachelor comes through. QRX is the one to find that opening pick, actually, on a Chevron on the opposite side, and the shatter comes through as well in the back. I mean, this is just utter dominance from from the side of Sheer Cold. The push onto this point, a late Baptiste window is going to do nothing. And Sheer Cold, despite all odds, actually going to win on Lejang Tower Moxie to give them that 1-0 lead.
Someone get Muse an MVP medal, because that may just save that time. I don't know if you saw it, but MG actually dropped the shadow from it. It connects onto Ericek. But Muse is actually able to push the wall to block any follow-up onto Reinhardt. So as a result, when the shadow wears off, Ericek comes in with a shadow of their own straight into Slackline. The Reinhardt shield in the way, it connects onto both of the supports, and as a result, it's this team up.
Yeah, I mean, that was just really smart play from them. I mean, the Baptiste windows as well, perfectly placed, like you mentioned. Muse MVP for that May play, for those May walls, and overall positioning with that Blizzard as well. I mean, just fantastic work from them as well. And MG were heavily in the lead, especially on round one. I mean, to win the first round and then to come back to Sheer Cold, I mean, that shows a lot of mental fortitude on their side as well. And Moxie, I mean, what do you think about that swap as well from Sheer Cold to go over from that Symmetra towards that Cassie? I mean, that takes a little bit of you know, gonads to make that swap towards that next that comeback, right?
Yeah, I think people honestly were impressing me every single especially the way that they were playing on Metro. We didn't really get to talk about it on the second map where we went over towards Gardens, but they do something really, really smart with the Symmetra. What they do is they don't actually use the Symmetra to try and push everyone onto point fast enough through window. They use it to get their Reinhardt to be able to charge and cancel charge onto bridge, pressuring out the members of MG and guaranteeing that they're not actually able to step foot onto that point because they're so occupied making sure none of them get knocked off by the Reinhardt that's looking to bowl a strike. And that was something that we saw them really being able to carry on through all of the maps, especially that last map where we saw them go, okay, well, they're running a Bastion, they're not going to have a Symmetra. As long as we get onto the point fast enough, we're not going to actually be contested. And when the Bastion comes calling for us, we might lose the fight and have to swap up eventually. But we're still going to pick up that first point percentage. And if you've ever followed Overwatch esports, you will know that there is a percentage and statistic that every single time it feels like we mentioned when we had to control, and that's if you win that first fight on that control point, something like an 86% chance that you're guaranteed to walk away with the map fully under your belt, and that's exactly what happened here.
Right. Yeah, I like how you mentioned that. I mean, it's tough to come back in those series on control. I mean, you only have 3 rounds to work with. In the past, it was 5, which was a bit too much. But now moving towards 3, it's been a lot. It's been quicker. It's been like the other maps. And speaking of other maps, we're going to the next one, which is going to be King's Row, Mox. And I mean, we've seen pretty similar compositions on both sides, I guess, with the May at least. But the transition between, the Cassidy, the Symmetra, and the Bastion, who do you think is favored between MG and Sheer Cold leading into this map?
I mean, I would say that MG definitely are showing that they want to use this Bastion to put a lot of pressure onto this Reinhardt composition. They're showing that they know that they need to target focus down that backline as well. But I think where the Bastion works is when you have Amp Matrix built up, right? That was when we were seeing the most value. So when it comes to that first fight, if the Bastion doesn't manage to pressure out the entire team, especially if you're expecting a Bastion to be on the other side, so you already are able to pre-position in anticipation of it, it's a little bit harder to find value. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either the Sojourn or the Cassidy coming out instead. Especially when you take that first fight around Statue, you want something like a Cassidy or a Sojourn to be able to put pressure. If a Bastion is on the scene, a lot of the time he has to be behind a Reinhardt shield. So you lose that sort of prong split focus attack, which can sometimes push a defensive team into being bottlenecked on point.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they make that swap over to that Sojourn, like you mentioned. I mean, that would be not a bad, a compositional change to make, especially with running that Cassidy, and you kind of have that same skill set leading over to Sojourn and some of these other characters. And I mean, Moxie, on that last map, and we saw that Reinhardt rush, and the Baptiste windows, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, like how you called it, that those are so impactful now. These windows from the Baptiste has been really, really strong, especially without that defense matrix being available in Overwatch 2, especially if you're on that other Reinhardt mirror. How do you counter it? How do you counter the fire strike that comes through? What do you do? Is that just a free kill every single time, or do you just have to position around walls, expect it? I mean, it just seems like it's so quick, that fire strike window combo, that just gets that one shot.
A lot of the time is actually on May to be able to react. So you'll see May's holding on to their walls not to try and isolate out members of the enemy team. If they know amplification matrix is about 10% away, that May is holding on to the wall so that you can try and wall up the window as fast as possible. And then you have a little bit more time to be able to position yourself away and look for that disengagement, either with the Lucio or just by walking away from the window a little bit more to the side. And it does put a lot of pressure on these Baptistes because it's the sort of double-edged sword that comes with a team that takes more damage in the first fight. The team that takes more damage is obviously going to give their Baptiste a lot more time to be able to heal. So they can very quickly turn things around. If you sustain in a fight long enough without losing members, but you are the ones taking more damage, your Amp Matrix is going to be online a lot faster. And especially with the recent buffs to Reinhardt's Fire Strike and the fact that you can go for 2 of them through the window, plus the fact that this composition likes to play really tight-knit, close together. That Fire Strike, like you pointed out, is finding so many kills because the sheer amount of bodies that are in front of the window when it gets released.
That's a good point, actually. I'm curious to see if the Baptiste can actually get those windows off. These Mays can actually counter, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, it's just such a interesting dynamic, and it's very hard to react to. I mean, that Fire Strike window combo is one of the most deadly in the history of Overwatch, especially if they counter it. And we have some nice, new dance moves in Overwatch 2 before we get to start. I mean, what better way to start an Overwatch match with, right?
I wish we could have synchronized dances. I wish, when Echo went for duplicate, she actually duplicated everyone's emotes. So we could just have very pretty routines coming on for synchronized dances. But it is going to be pretty much a dance of the Reinhardts in this match. Because like we said, it is going to be about those ultimates coming online, but it really is on King's Row, most traditionally, about who is going to have that main tank diff.
And games paused real fast, guys, while we're on King's Row, just to get everybody, make sure everybody's good to go. Potential ping issues or something. We're all playing online, so some of these things are, this is just what happens in Overwatch Online. And we got a great matchup between Sheer Cold and MG. And like you mentioned, Mox, that Reinhardt dance. I mean, it's so fun to see Reinhardt meta back in the forefront. I mean, we have seen in the past different compositions take, you know, the actual main stage, and now to come back to Reinhardt, everybody's begging for it. It feels like, Mux. It feels like over the history of Overwatch, everybody's like, we want Reinhardt meta. We want Reinhardt. Reinhardt feels terrible in Overwatch 2. And now we're back at a Reinhardt composition. And I mean, does it feel good to be back, or are you wishing maybe we see more of that Winston?
I mean, I honestly like it, but then again, I'm an anime. So when I see Reinhardt's in my matches, I just get the biggest smile on my face because I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a sleeve that with your name written on it. But no, it's really nice to see, as well as the fact that, like, a lot of the time when we see support lineups, it can be a little bit tough, I think, for teams when they're playing into a Kiriko, just because Susie can immediately cleanse the impact of not just anti-effects, but also ultimates and CC, right? So you work so hard, especially for a Reinhardt, and you learn that shadow, but then a Susie comes through. Because we're running with these Baptistes and Lucios, the Lucio for the speed boost to make sure that the Reinhardt gets into the fight as quickly as possible without losing the shield, the BAP or the amp matrix that we've been mentioning, it does mean that your work really
and on both sides, they kind of just play around this statue coming towards that mini side. The wall comes out towards the back. The lamp, though, aggressively placed by Johan, but they're already down that lamp on the opposite side. Sheer Cold did a great job to shut it out. And now you have Q-Rex on the top side. Hanzo, which, by the way, on King's Row has always been a staple, but he gets traded out by SXJ. SXJ did this before in the Jane Tower as well. Perfect right clicks. Even though they had the lamp, they couldn't use it in time, and Sheer Cold do sustain through their lamp now, but now MG is going to have their own Baptiste lamp cooldown to come back off. But a shatter was built so fast, but a main wall from XSJ has been phenomenal just to shut out the charge to prevent any kills from coming through. But now back towards from the spawn comes QRX, and now MG is going to have to back on out of there, as Sheer Cold are surely going to take point number 1.
Oh, Sheer Cold are definitely taking this fight, but MG have the ultimate if they want to try and recontest. And that is why we see Muse aggressively posted up towards that choke, wanting to save either the wall or the ice block to guarantee that they don't allow just that to happen. There's the wall, Ironfire coming out from Sheer Cold, knowing they have a little bit of window to be able to avoid Amp Matrix, but now that the wall is gone, MG goes for that frontline fight, and this Ironfire has already won off for Sheer Cold. Let it encompass this point, and MG, with the ultimates that they had still at their advantage, turn it around. Sheer Cold takes 2 ticks, but that is all.
Wow. I mean, yeah, MG just to make me my words there. What a great recontest from them into that shatter and the mail in the Baptiste window. Now Sheer Cold are going to have to come back in with this Hanzo arrow, which it seems like MG's doing a great job at just avoiding it in its entirety, but a high nuke comes out actually from Juso. Now they have to speed boost on the opposite side. Now into a mail, though, and he's going to be stuck in it. Nope, barely escapes with his life, and actually only the Reinhardt gets stuck, but Theo doesn't have any support. He's zoned out from his team, but air kick on the opposite side also gets taken down by Juso, and on the backside now has to fight towards this pass on the inside, but a main wall comes out to find afterwards, but a nice sticky grenade from the inside of the hotel to find that backside. But Catacombi on the opposite side finds XSJ, who has been a staple of MG on the opposite side of window, actually committed from Sucrux, now forced to use that Baptiste lamp into that Fire Strike window in both windows on opposite sides, but Sheer Cold actually managed to get the point because of the zoning of that Baptiste window, so they're going to take that first point, and MG are going to have to reset and get some staggered kills.
Yeah, the thing for MG at the moment now is that they don't want to have those dagger kills come through because they want control of the field. But they've already been pushed extremely far back. QRXU is holding on to this Dragon Strike as well for this next fight that he's going to be able to have to try and control that choke and make it a little bit harder for MG to be able to post Thematic up on that first corner and get the hammer to swing onto as many members from Sheer Cold as possible. This is the true time burner. This is what we tend to see be really fun to favor defense, but Sheer Cold have entirely avoided it.
And they're fighting towards this library side, towards the pub, and now Joseph's gonna build that high noon. There's nothing to counter him this time besides that May wall, like you said, but he goes aggressive, actually runs in front of his Reinhardt, but he's right there behind him, and the Dragon Strike comes out to try to zone his backline from supporting him, but no kills just yet. However, Sheer Cold very low in the backside flank from Joso, perfectly timed, but he's actually traded out. Nobody was there with the support. MG was not ready for such an aggressive play from Joso, and now on this front side library, they're going to go down, but the beat drop was committed by Sheer Cold to win that fight. It might end up not being that bad for MG.
Yeah, you can actually see that MG really set that kill up onto Eric perfectly. They used the Maywall to entirely zone the Reinhardt away. Yuzo knows that he's extremely low, and that Mei wall is stopping the Lucio line of sight, so he's not getting heals either. Which means one well-timed frag grenade takes the Reinhardt down, but SXJ to get that wall into position has to go aggressively into Sheer Cold, and they take the Mei down. Without that Mei, there is nothing to stop the team from wanting to push the front line, because they know there is no isolated, so they can look for the frontline brawl. Now that Ame is in play, you have to be a little bit more careful, but SXJ with the exit wall, to this engagement catches all of them in the blizzard, and Sheer Cold are forced to go straight back to school.
SSJ has been so good on this Mei Moxie. I mean, we called out Muse on the last map, and now SXJ kind of proving why they're one of the better Meis as well on MG's side with that Mei wall, Mei ultimate. However, you know, they did commit some ultimates. Sheer Cold didn't really use anything. Nice Mei wall before the other Mei actually counter wall, like you mentioned. I mean, that was perfectly timed from them. However, Sheer Cold coming to this next fight, they're going to have 5 ultimates.
Sheer Cold are going to have to be very careful about how they use them though. But already we can see one is Dragon Strike comes on through, it's going to go into a blizzard and Sheer Cold to try and get the follow-up. They have isolated Geomatic. The lamp comes on through behind a little bit of time, but it's not enough. Without that Reinhardt, MD have no frontline presence, and as a result, look at how aggressive this Hanzo gets to go. Banks over the Mei wall and straight into the backline and picks up so many headshots onto those supports. And MG, it was over so quickly, they're not really able to build into another blizzard to try and slow Sheer Cold down in this next fight. Especially because Sheer Cold now have time to be able to set themselves up onto high ground, limiting the impact of Theomatic's counter.
I feel so bad for Theo there to just kind of get zoned out, left to kind of fight for his own life in that corner. And now on the opposite side, Jozo with the Heine ready to go, but a boop comes through, and the shot followed from Juzo. Nice job from them to find that kill as well. And now they're just going to hold the W key without having to commit ultimates. However, Sheer Cold has been known to try to throw something out, but they have nothing in this situation. MG doing a great job just sustaining, taking their win, and they have 2 minutes left to hold on third point King's Row.
Look at what that kill, by the way, onto Purex2 has done for the ultimate economy of MG. They've bought themselves time coming into this next fight with nearly 5 ultimates in play. Purex is using that point, getting a little bit of information, but Theomatic comes in with the shatter first of all. They use the Mei wall again to keep their attack up, and he's not going to be able to get taken down by MG and can survive. The lamp even coming on through. Try to make sure that Sheer Cold can keep the pressure up on the front line, but there's no one really able to run too fast in the back, and as a result, MG is still in control.
Yes, oh, double boop! What the heck did we just see there? But Sukrux finds Juzo, XSJ finds Muse on the front side. They both don't have Reinhardts, but it's still a fight that's winnable for either side. However, with that Mei freeze, you can just kind of play your life. QRX does find that kill on the stray bar, however, so these are some stagger kills. Nice shots from him. And MG gonna have to go for the reset, but what a double boop we saw from stray bar and Katakomi there.
Look, the universe is perfectly balanced. Okay? If one run goes off the map, the other one has to go off the map too. MG, however, is still going to be holding on to ultimates. They've got the Jedi to zone their way out and guarantee that they can survive that spawn. The hyper armor doing so much good to guarantee Muso survives. The Sheer Cold are also trying to avoid that Jedi. Have been forced back around the corner. They are going to have to look for this contest, but they are going to have a blizzard and shatter pretty soon. However, MG making that first move. Once again, Ant Matrix come on out, trying to stem any impact coming on through from the blizzard that Muse had dropped. Use it there on the cast with that lamp just to hold that position super aggressively forward. And Sheer Cold, they had the means of stunning up MG, but they didn't have the follow-up damage. Kurex was unfortunately not able to get it Dragon Strike in time. As a result, MG hold strong, and there's only 10 seconds left. It's going to be a lot of desperate push from Sheer Cold to keep the payload in play, music going on to the tracer, keep it as long as possible.
Oh my god, Eric low HP, 0 seconds, overtime now ticks down. It was touched to the point, but Eric does go down even after getting the health pack. And now with that tracer, I mean, Yuzo's just not missing right now. They just stop every push. They thwart every push from Sheer Cold, and they actually stop them in third point. MG on King's Row to take that edge. And now moving towards the attacking side, Moxie. I mean, that was just a fantastic play from them on the defense. However, maybe leading towards offense, something can be done to stop this MG side. Maybe Sheer Cold, they want to play that Hanzo again, you think, Moxie?
I mean, I can see the Hanzo coming through again, like we did. It was being pretty efficiently. You had a lot of pressure on Reinhardt. Like, unlike the caster, you do have that verticality in place. You can find high ground, you can climb over the Mei walls to give more pressure on either breaking them or trying to push onto the players behind them. The problem was that MG was very coordinated when it came to there's the double pick. When it came to things like those two, Trevor was doing so much to make sure that user, even though he isn't actually able to climb his way onto the high ground physically, he's still actually able to connect and threaten out those players on the high ground, because Strabo would go after them and knock them down so that the caster would be able to connect the shot.
I mean, that's just great work from the side of MG there. But now coming into the attacking side, Mox, your favorite hero? See some Ana, you think? Maybe? No, probably not, right? There's no way. Considering
they're in attacking spawn, Dustin. Don't break my heart like that.
But they do get the Ana on the top side. I mean, that's where that pre-fire sleep dart comes through before, the swap potentially, and the Pharah to come over here to give some maybe potential angles, or at least bake out the entire side of Sheer Cold. But Sheer Cold actually going to take that aggressive angle on the backside of the statue, looks like, Marks.
Yeah, MG opting off of the Ana onto, once again, that Rhine Rush with the Bastion. They're actually still going to be on that casting, however, trying to keep those flank angles under control for the defense. MG wrap around the side, the Rhine Rush using that shield to push Wooding to attack and so much space, and they will actually not in time to isolate the Rhine from his team. And as a result, Yuzo was actually able to hold himself onto it. Eric goes down, and everything is going rapidly apart for Sheer Cold. They're actually flipping onto particularly the attacking side. That is not your respawn room you're running to. Any cover that they come from this bastion.
Hey, you can't run from him, especially after Ryan's dead. I mean, that was just an outplay from the entire side of MG just to kind of close out on Eric, not give him any positioning. And because they did the same thing on their defensive side as well, they really just are focusing down Eric early to make sure that he can't get any positioning, and just to take him out first has been a blessing for MG, honestly, on King's Row.
Yeah, man, just playing the homing pigeon that connected that charge onto Suka. And it is going to be MG picking up point A very, very quickly. Here's the difference, however. Sheer Cold, because they lost that point and they didn't actually contest it, get the opportunity to contest at this show. Johan with this amplification matrix is going to make it harder. The Super dogs have an amplification matrix mirror. So it is going to come down to who is going to find more value, whether or not Sheer Cold even wants to try and test this for the amp matrix.
There it is. Ant Matrix comes out into that May wall that was perfectly placed. Lamp comes out now to stop the other Baptiste window from doing more damage than it possibly could, but actually no deaths there, which is very surprising. Into a Bastion Ultimate. They back up for Juzo to actually get this Bastion Ultimate on the front side. In comes that May ult. Doesn't catch anybody out necessarily, but the beat drop committed to stop QRX from finding any kills there. Into a Shatter from Airtech, but it doesn't find any incredible value. And on the opposite side, Theo still got their Shatter available for this fight, but they don't want to push into Shatter. They're taking it slow, biding their time on the front side. Now they come through the Shatter into the High Noon. He does find somebody in the backside, but not the High Noon. And in fact, it's still going, still building that charge. He doesn't get the shot off, unfortunately. And MG, they did lose SXJ, who had that May ultimate, but now they're going to have to wait for them to come back to spawn. So they're going to wait behind this choke, and Sheer Cold, they played it well.
Yeah, you can actually see that they're looking for that Shadow to connect onto the Deadeye, but QRX positions perfectly, knowing that if the Shadow does connect onto the once you're holding the Deadeye, MG can't actually capitalize! The Fire Strike from Eric takes the May down, but the Blizzard is actually able to connect onto the ground. Hangfire comes on close and only, and as a result, even without the Reinhardt, they will have the better sustain. Try and push MG back into the scope once again. They're just dropping the Amp Matrix to try to keep this team stuffed up in that very position that they've been finding so hard to break through.
Yeah, they're finally going to do so as well. I mean, that was an incredibly fast play from them. It was so funny just to watch XXJ get deleted by Aerokek's Fire Strike just to find him as he was coming in with that May ult. But unfortunately, too many ultimates to work against. And in fact, coming into this next fight, Mox, I mean, pretty similar situation. Bastion ultimate, Baptiste window against no Baptiste window and Sheer Cold side. I mean, what does MG do here? Or sorry, what does Sheer Cold do here to stop MG from steamrolling?
But Sheer Cold were able to stop MG from steamrolling. That time bank that was so out of sorts from the fast A push is now a little bit back into what Sheer Cold was dealing with. And now this is going to be manageable. Blizzard comes on through from Yuzo and connects onto that basket as quickly as possible. Yuzo entirely frozen up is the target focus that the team pushed on to. No Bastion able to defend the space, able to use the ultimate to zone Sheer Cold away from any follow-up on the Blizzard either. And it's very clean, very clinical. A push, a fight, and an absolute dumpster as MG go back into that choke once again.
Yeah, you know what I forgot there, Moxie, to take into account is, the fact that Mayult is the best ultimate in the freaking game. So, in that situation, yeah, Muse just tosses out that Mayult. They just stop any push from MG. And now coming back on the opposite side, I mean, Theo's been crazy with these fire strikes, but this Reinhardt battle has been very intriguing to watch.
And we're going to be watching it again in this next bit, but QRXU once again has that Deadeye. Cold, if they feel it, they are going to be in pressure of that Shadow, can just distancely make sure you have the Deadeye, even threatening schematics. If the Shadow is more successful, the team still can't really push off of it. User playing very far away, they're taking this flank right approach. They are going to put it out, but that Shadow is going to be able to try and find this Reinhardt. There's the Deadeye. The wall's going to be making sure that he's able to try and push for a little bit better. But the Shadow into the Bastion ultimate!
That's so cool. I love seeing that in the kill feed, the Bastion ultimate, Mox. That's one of the most beautiful things that you could see in the game. Jose's probably happy with that. He's dancing, of course, on the payload. But that was set up by Theo. I mean, fantastic shadow from him, right?
He's got the blue shoot coming in with the carry shoot for that one. The crouch control, keeping all of Shield in position for the Bastion strike to be able to connect. Maywell comes from through from MG, trying to block out the impact from two cracks. This is Shield throwing in the Amp Matrix, not to try and find a kill, but to try and regain control of point B. Now MG are going to be coming out from a scope. You have a little bit more time to play around with the high ground to be able to fall back onto, but Eric still finds himself against that Maywell, and MG finds more success.
Yeah, fantastic Maywell from SXJ, and now Sheer Cold have to reset yet again, and now this is entering, last fight territory here, Mox. I mean, what does Sheer Cold do to stop this? I mean, every time we ask it, it seems to be Muse with that May ultimate, but SXJ on the opposite side, has been able to keep their May ult as well, so coming in this next fight, it's going to be all off the back of these Mays and this beat drop from Catacombi.
Yeah, the problem as well is that this point is a little bit more wider, so there's more space for the members of MG to position around this Blizzard that they know is online. They know it's coming up. The thing is, they have a Blizzard as well to be able to counter, and they've decided they're going to drop this first.
And it might actually pan out, but the beat drop from Catacombi perfectly timed to keep them alive. But no, Theomatic gets frozen. But he does have cover on the backside, and now it's only this Bastion ultimate, which by itself usually doesn't do a lot besides zone, but these May right clicks from the backside, keeping that backside in a tough spot. And actually, SXJ finds two cracks on the opposite side. Juzo finds Eritek, and now they're trying to break through this last point. May committed towards that ice block, and Sheer Cold are losing member after member, and MG to even the series at 1-1. They do so on King's Row, tie the series up, which means we're going to the map number 3.
Oh my goodness. We talked about it. We said it's probably going to be the DPS that makes the difference maker of the follow-up on these Reinhardts, and it very much was. That Bastion was absolutely shredding. Every single time you got stuck on one of those strokes, you just employed the Bastion, punishing the fact that the defense, where they stand the best on King's Row is when the space is enclosed and they can control those strokes after they've won a fight, right? When they push the second team back to the spawn and all 5 of those members are traipsing through the same space. But that also plays purpose into how Bastion wants to operate. And as a result, MG, with just the sheer amount of damage outburst that they had available, are just able to push Shield to capture the brink once more.
Yeah, I thought honestly it was I would give MVP to Juzo there, but obviously SXJ really been one of the most impactful Mays. I mean, probably the more impactful May in the series thus far. But Muse on the other side, I mean, both these Mays have been amazing. That shatter from Theomatic, I mean, MG is coming online for them now. And considering they lost the Zhang Tower Mox, coming to this map number 3 after you get that momentum back on King's Row, who do you think takes the edge leading into this, or is it just totally even 50-50?
I was going to say, that's such a mean question, because both of these teams have shown that they adapt into how the other one plays extraordinarily well, right? We were seeing that the Bastion was coming on through and punishing when those members of Sheer Cold were grouped up, but at the same time, we were seeing Sheer Cold have some serious pushback against the Bastion when the Blizzard was online. I think for a lot of these teams, it's going to be about how they're able to navigate the neutral as opposed to when they have ultimates online, because both of these teams, when ultimates are online, are very clean. They're very clinical. They drop 2 ultimates, they immediately win a fight. Where it gets a little bit murkier is when we're in the neutral and you don't have things like the Blizzard to be able to stop this Bastion push, or an Amp Matrix to set up a double fire strike.
I mean, we'll have to see how this pans out in that third map. I mean, we knew the series was going to be close, but it has been a barn burner of a series, guys. We'll be going to a short break. When we come back, we'll come back with that map number 3, so do not go anywhere. See you guys after this short break. Welcome back to the Pro AM qualifiers, and we're in EMEA yet again. Moxie with myself, Dustin, joined by her, and we're coming into map number 3 now. Why are you laughing at me, Mox? What the heck? We're going to the Rialto, guys, okay? We're coming to the Rialto for sure. Cole versus MG, and this has been a banger of a series, Mox. I mean, we've watched it from the beginning. We knew both these teams coming out of the Swiss round, like you mentioned, both 7-1, and we knew both the teams were kind of evenly matched, but to have this close series is a treat to come back to Overwatch and see such a intriguing match.
I mean, you can really say that this match has been quite explosive. Literally, because Bastion's involved. That's why I was laughing, Dustin. I was like, I've got a pun. I'm going to be able to use it. I'm going to use it in 5, 4, 3, 2. And I wasn't entirely too smug about it. But I mean, I've got to use the English degree for something. And speaking of something, we're headed over to something maybe a little bit more different. We are headed over towards Rialto. This is where we could potentially see a movement away from the Reinhardt. But given the success of both of these teams, I wouldn't be that surprised if we do see it being run here still, even though there's a lot of focus for Rialto on high ground, and it has been something that Winston players like to really be able to use, all players as well, given the whole environmental potential around that first fight. But both of these teams have been extremely successful on that main rush, and I really do feel like both of these teams are wanting to double down on that comp.
Yeah, generally, I guess, like Overwatch teams, I mean, we've seen it in the past, Moxie, where teams are just going to stick with that same composition regardless of map, just for, you know, that familiarity with it, right? Because there's so much variation when it comes to playstyles of Overwatch, right? You'll always see fans talking about this game where they're like, oh my God, why didn't they play the X comp? Why didn't they do this? When realistically, it's always just a matter of familiarity and how comfortable you are in those compositions, because, you know, I mean, we know better than anybody. You can't just change compositions off on the fly, you know, it's just going to make too hard of a decision, too hard. The roles change, you know, everybody has to play more aggressive, and there's so many different playstyle changes that happen. So like you mentioned, you know, the May or that Reinhardt may not be as good in such an open map, but you know, we might actually see that those composition changes simply because Rialto is such a different change. It's such a you know, a spanner, I guess, for Europeans instead of a wrench, right, in the side of the of both teams, honestly.
You could say that. You could definitely say that. But again, like, is another reason why we could potentially still see this Reinhardt rush is, like, no one really wants to bend the knee, because it's not like both of these teams are having that big a deficit on the Reinhardt rush. It's not like one's playing amazingly better than the other one, which is where we do tend to see teams wanting to try and switch things out and go for different compositions when it's obvious that you're weaker at that mirror. Both of these teams have been equally successful in this meta, and so for both of them, especially now given the fact that we're 3 maps in, and a lot of the time when you're a Rhine player playing into another Rhine, it's about building up that time to understand how the other Rhine plays so you can play around it. That's sort of behind you now. Everyone on this lobby knows how the other side likes to play, and already we were seeing adaptation to curtailing the strategies and win conditions of the other side. On map 3, I'm expecting the same sort of strategies, where they know, okay, the Bastion is something that we're going to have to go against, or the Reinhardt is going to be something that we have to go against. We're going to work as quickly as possible to isolate it. One thing I might say we could see is that Theomatic has been known to pull out either the Diva or the Hammond. I wouldn't be surprised if that is where we want to see MG starting to lead us into.
You know, I was a little afraid to talk about it, but yeah, the Wrecking Ball, I mean, potentially to come out. We've seen a lot of discussion around this character recently just being one of the more viable ones. But guys, just a quick PSA announcement before you. Remember, drops are enabled for this stream as well, so make sure to get your gang in here to watch this, watch some contenders and watch some Pro-Am qualifiers, because this is one of the craziest tournaments we've seen in Overwatch's history. The fact that we get to see Overwatch League teams versus contenders teams, you know, Joe versus Schmo kind of, or Joe versus Pro kind of situation, although not really, considering contenders players are equally as professional. But coming on to this, Moxie, I think you're right. We're sure Cole's gonna maybe swap over to this Wrecking Ball composition on the defense, where MG sticking with that Rhine.
Yeah, Ball does typically do better into that Reinhardt composition, just because, again, you like have that verticality. You can really encompass this Reinhardt on all angles. What this Reinhardt is going to do, however, though, is block the angles for the Widowmaker. You can see Q-Actually just tracking those players through the shield, waiting for it to drop to find that snipe. There's going to be Eric X on this high ground, looking to maybe power drive one of those players up past the Rhine shield to set up for the Widowmaker, but that may well be in play, and user swapping for the Cassidy means that now they've spotted out the composition. Not only was Shackle not able to find a first pick, thus allowing them more ultimate charge, MG being on the attack have the luxury of going back to spawn and swapping to not just a mirror, but a composition that counters sheer cold. This Sombra is going to be so hard for the ball to deal with.
Yeah, they're going to be able to top or run into that Zenyatta, like you mentioned, run into that Widowmaker. I mean, it's going to be so hard. Now the hack comes through the slam, and they immediately shut out QRX. So that takes that Widowmaker one-shot out of the fight immediately in sheer cold. They're just going to have to keep backing up. Now, I'm sure a swap maybe will come through for QRX. No, he's going to stick with it and try to come out of spawn to look for that backside. But Theo just slams that Zenyatta. No support for him besides that Ana, and they don't have the heals there. But QRX does find the Sombra onto that backside, but SXJ just on the front side is doing being an absolute pest towards that Wrecking Ball on the front side. They still have that Ana heals, but on the backside, they relied on QRX, who finds that Widowmaker one shot when they only had 1.62 meters left to go. Theo's trying to create some space so they can capture it out, but QRX is just hitting shot after shot after shot. 3 kills for QRX on that backside, and the nano boost to sustain. MG don't capture that first point.
Eric, yeah, getting that nano boost, getting to keep themselves on point so that QRX continues to hold this position. Yuzo on this Sombra has one mission and one mission only. Deny the Widowmaker's existence, pull out that position. There's the attempt at the one clip, but the oversight comes on through. It's not in time to save the Sombra's position is already too far into that backline, and MG, with the threat of the Widowmaker gone, can start to push onto the front. They're not going to be sniped out. They can push this fight onto bridge and isolate out those squishy members from sheer cold.
Yeah, MG looks like they're very coordinated to coordinate the dive onto that Zenyatta, but sheer cold on the opposite side. Maybe want to swap off that, and that they do. Now they swap towards that Reinhardt composition, Mox. And I mean, they've ran out on previous maps. The counter comp's kind of happening back and forth, but now MG, they're going to have ultimates this next fight. Sheer cold, as soon as they go for the engagement, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, that Reinhardt shield is blocking a lot of pressure from MG on the low ground and setting QRX up to be able to have that cycle into Cassidy finding first blood. The EMP comes out from MG, trying to use the ultimate advantage against Shakehold. Remember, they've swapped up their composition entirely. They're not coming with any ultimates to this fight. And EMP was able to save MG's position, but Shakehold with the frontline brawl pressure just have the better sustain and damage when the fight gets up close and personal. MG are off the ball. They're onto the Rhine Rush once again.
That's funny. It's just that one team tries to counter the other. They try to mix it up on Rialto, then immediately swap back towards second points. But the Baptiste window towards the top side gets immediately Maywalled by SXJ. But now MG's entire position is known on the back side. The Maywall actually, or the May actually the zone towards his backside with that beat drop as well. MG kind of played back. Shatter came out from Erikek. Theomatic still has his. Breaks the shield. Beat drop out, but the Shatter is blocked by Erikek. Perfectly timed. But over the top side with the high noon, I mean, you can't avoid it. But the Maywall! Perfectly timed. However, QRX towards the back does find Strayboard. The immediate grenade comes through from QRX. Get SXJ as well. And great job from QRX over the top side to sustain. However, Yoham and Juzo still alive from this backside. They had the Baptiste slam. I mean, they can't entirely get killed here on the inside. However, Katakomi does trade them down. And now they actually run towards them. However, for MG, they did push in. They are stopped by sheer cold on this second phase yet again.
I mean, talking about players still alive, QRXU on that Cassidy just did so much damage. Controlling that staircase, pushing MG back into that inner room, and guaranteeing that even though they started to pull ahead, their ultimates were used pretty nicely, they still don't get to push that payload any further. Yoham has the Ant Matrix, but they want to hold on to it for as long as possible until now. Sucrex drops theirs in first. Again, we see that Maywall coming on through, and MG are still holding onto their Ant Matrix to drop when we actually see Shakehold have to contest this payload. They're going to walk into the battle with nothing to counter it. They have to make a move first, and they decide Blizzard is the way to go.
And they used that Blizzard. They used the lamp though on the inside to keep them alive, and actually Baptiste window on the inside where it can easily be zoned, but the Baptiste ultimate or the Bastion ultimate on the outside just kind of zone this backside. The sustain is there as well, and SXJ's the one to find that pick off onto the Lucio of sheer cold, and Jozo finds QRX as well, and now MG are kind of rolling on through as they actually back up, take the Reinhardt towards the spawn on the opposite side, so they lose the Magic on the opposite side. Now sheer cold, they can come back in.
That's the free shatter. MG are going to have to be so careful about how they contest this. The Maywall already gone. Nothing can stand in the way of this Reinhardt shatter, and as a result, MG are forced to back away and wait for Erikek to come back into the fray. The QRXU has already been able to try and carve out that next escape. There it is! Erikek flanks up into the staircase. All of the intel given away that Theomatic was not playing with the team to be able to block. But a really good wall comes on through from XXJ to be able to make sure that the follow-up is not as nasty as Sheer Cold were wanting, and MG can still find a couple of picks.
Oh, what a nice May block, ice block from SXJ there, but MG eventually do get traded out by Sheer Cold. So now onto this recontest yet again. MG gonna have to come through this bridge side against the High Noon on the defensive side. The May wall surely is gonna give them some space, but Muse building that May ultimate as well to counter SXJ on the offensive side. I mean, the onus is on MG now leading into this next fight.
Yeah, 20 seconds left. Jedi comes out from QRX, you're just trying to zone MG away and eat into that time bank even further. They've decided to take the flank up inside upstairs, and as a result, no one's really going to be able to touch the car if they're all stuck in the blizzard.
I mean, literally everybody's frozen there. Air Kick does trade off Theomatic. Catacombi does get Yuzo on the opposite. So Sheer Cold trying to stay in this now towards this point, but the Baptiste window to zone. Actually, Maywall sticks them off on the top side, but Yoham does get QRX. And towards this point, they're trying to sustain with this Lucio, but the Baptiste pumping into the back line, just going to go for the quick reset to come back, but the Shatter, no way! Catacombi's dead. Oh, and Sucrux on the backside. Counter Shatter by Air Kick, but he misses. He whiffs entirely, but the charge through onto the Maywall. They get the kill. Muse finds Theomatic, and this is so close. But Sebastian pumping through the shield, has the Lucio pocket. Juzo finds him. It's just Muse. Takes down Juzo as well. It's just Trader on the point, but QRX is here to find the grenade sticky. Can they find this Lucio who does get one? But guess who's here? It's Yoham who teleported over the backside, but they can't touch. And they actually get pooped off the point last second by Catacombi. And that was a potential win for MG, but they get stopped last second, Mox.
Yeah, Sheer Cold able to funnel their way back onto the point a little faster than MG. You can actually see the swaps coming out. Muse going on to that Tracer, Catacombi coming in with the Kiriko so they can swift step from their spawn point back to the payload as quickly as possible and are able to just overwhelm the remaining members of MG in that overtime fight. But here we see one of the dangers of Rialto, right? Just being able to get that payload past this bridge allows the defense so much opportunity to eat into a time bank, and that's something that MG are going to definitely be looking to hold Sheer Cold hostage to. Because what QRXU was able to do with that castle from the high ground is what cost MG the map.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was just really smart play from Sheer Cold, from QRX to get those kills. I mean, he's been playing amazing on Rialto, considering his swaps, you know, from Hanzo all the way to the Cassidy, all the way to the Symmetra, right? Having a very versatile hero pool has been phenomenal for them, but not on the opposite side, on the defensive side, not really sticking towards that Wrecking Ball comp that we saw earlier, Mox. They're just going to immediately start out with this May Reinhardt comp.
Yeah, remember, the defensive team don't get the opportunity to swap their composition unless they lose that first fight. So I'm much more of a fan of going with this composition, thinking that, okay, Sheer Cold are probably going to swap onto it. You need to have that made to be able to use the counter wall's threat to stop Erikek from just walking onto Theomatic. Your backline's a little bit more cushioned, plus you have the opportunity to control that high ground. Something that we didn't see from Sheer Cold the last time because they weren't running a shield to keep their Cassie on that high ground floor.
Comey just wall riding over the top side, looking for those boots. Can't find them, unfortunately. Nice zoning. The movement from MG has been amazing thus far. Same with Sheer Cold. And now the boot actually comes through on the backside. Immediate May wall, and that was perfectly timed. Nice actual engagement from the side of Sheer Cold. The Baptiste lamp as well. I mean, that was just perfectly timed, perfectly placed from Sheer Cold. Now they're just going to roll on through MG here, it looks like, on this first point. The recontest that's going to be available, though.
It feels like it's just a battle between the maze of whose wall is better. When Kingstar SXA was being so impactful, but Muse that with that wall to manage to isolate out the members of MG off of that gorgeous whip coming through from Catacombi means that now MG don't really have the ultimates built up to be able to challenge Sheer Cold for this payload control. Ducrax already has an amplification matrix and there's no sound barrier. The wall is going to come up and block and will mitigate a little bit of the damage, but again, it forces Sheer Cold into being able to push MG on to taking fights on bridge, and that means environmental knockoff potential for your Lucio. Catacombi moves forward aggressively forward, pressures that front line, and there's nothing they can do. They can't walk away from the amp matrix because they're running into the Lucio's knockback. They can't walk into the amp matrix because they don't have the sustain to be able to live through it.
Oh, and now coming to this next fight, MG, I mean, they're still down in terms of ultimates. I mean, Catacombi as well, that environmental, like you mentioned, perfectly timed. I mean, they've been playing so good on this Lucio. towards this point as well to sustain with that damage. I mean, now 4 minutes and 47 seconds left. I mean, they're just snowballing through Rialto here, Mox, and now MG over this top side. They're going to have to find something here with an aggressive play potentially to come back, but now you're against the males. I mean, you're against all odds here on MG's side.
And MG haven't had the opportunity to eat into Sheercold's time bank by controlling that high ground. QRQ had already invaded it when this push had started. The Blizzard comes out from MG, but the damage just isn't there because Sheercold have already chewed through the entire roster, barring 2. And now Eric with the Shadow just gets to hold up, wait for MG to roll past them, knowing that they had to swap onto the hammer to try and touch. It's the free ultimate. It's the free map win. Sheercold takes Rialto in their stride.
What an absolute snowball from Sheercold towards the end. I mean, Rialto, great map from him. Sucrax deserved play of the game. Amazing Baptiste, honestly, throughout the entire match as well. And, you know, what a great series from Sheercold to win there, even though, like, it was a little bit rough towards the second map and first map, but they actually come back and make sure they actually get the 2-1 victory over them. That's going to be phenomenal for them moving forward in the rest of the Pro AM qualifiers.
I mean, it felt just a little bit more mismatched. I think Rialto was probably not the closest that we've seen in the series, and a large part of it really comes down to Katakomi on that Lucio. Because from the very beginning of MG's defense, when they all get knocked off of that high ground and the pacing just becomes a little bit more broken up, they don't really get any point to recover. They try when they're contesting that payload at point A, but again, the Lucio comes in, and all of that timing, the pacing that they're so used to, we know Amp Matrix is out, we don't have anything to be able to counter it, so we have to drop a Mei wall, position ourselves onto the side lanes so that we don't lose any members, wait for Amp Matrix to be gone, and then contest. Once again, goes right in the water when the Lucio wall rides through and puts even more pressure on that angle, and it forces them to having that really horrible catch-22 between a rock and a hard place, quite literally. You're between a river and a very painful place of that Amp Matrix being up. And even from there, because they lose that fight at the checkpoint, they don't get that reset button that a lot of the defensive teams are really able to use Rialto to thrive off of, which is controlling the high ground entering into point B. So there's nothing to really force resources out from Sheercold when they push into bridge. Worse, all of the resources that should be there for the defense are available for the offense. So even though the defense are able to get that full regroup, they're still not in the best position to use their ultimates. Instead, that position is already occupied by Sheercold.
Yeah, I mean, that's just phenomenal from them. But we're going to another map, by the way, guys. Sorry. So we're going off of this one. I mean, we'll see if MG can actually come back in the next one as well. And Mox, like you said, I mean, they played that amazing Sheercold. Perfectly timed engagements. I mean, to prioritize that high ground, to just keep snowballing on through. It's going to be a rough mental spot for MG to come back from. I mean, after that map, Mox, it seemed like they were just kind of on the back foot after swapping off their composition, you know, to play that, to play the Wrecking Ball composition, to swap things through, and they get stopped in the second phase. I mean, that was a little bit tough for MG, but now on map number 3, they still have, or 4, they'll have a chance here to come back, which is going to be Coliseum and push. So potentially in the mirror, I mean, they still feel relatively good, but Sheercold, they look really good on Rialto.
It is. It's going to be the Rhine Rush. It's going to be the Rhine Rush. Both of these teams are committed to the Rhine Rush, and it absolutely makes sense that we're headed over to Coliseum for the push map, because this is where the Reinhardt thrives the most of all of these push maps, right? You have that first fight, you've got the Mei wall set up, you can use it as a springboard and backboard for the Reinhardt to be able to set up those charges, to be as quickly as possible finding those pins, find that kill, and then move on very quickly. You're going to have to run the counter Mei to make sure that your team doesn't have exactly that occur to them. The backline is going to be put under a lot more pressure, plus it's going to be harder for aggressive Lucios to get into your backline and try and knock you forward into the front line, something that I'm sure MG are going to be keeping a very watchful eye on.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to pay attention to, you know, what Sheercold is doing here. And like you mentioned, I mean, Muse has been amazing so far on the Mei, and both Meis have been really, like you mentioned, with who gets the Mei wall off first, who gets the better one. And I mean, generally, it seems like, you know, obviously SXJ has been to come out on the top side, but, you know, on the opposite spectrum, you know, at Juzo on the Bastion has been playing amazing to just constantly deal that damage. The Baptiste windows from Johan, by the way, and Stripper were some nice boops. But on the opposite side, you know, Katakomi with these awesome boops as well to kind of get those environmental kills has been phenomenal. And I mean, that's why the series has been so good so far, Mox. I mean, both these teams are pretty evenly matched. And coming to Coliseum, you know, who do you think has the edge leading into this next map?
I think it's all really going to come down to who wins that first fight, because both of these teams are pretty evenly matched when it does come to that Rhine Rush and Ultimates for online, but when it comes to neutral, I would give it over to Sheer Cold a little bit more just because of how aggressively their backline plays. Right, the fact that Katakomi is going in and looking for those disruption shots, is trying to push those players into either that Reinhardt or out of position, and whether or not we see User come out onto the Bastion, you're going to have a lot more damage in the front line. However, when it comes to flanks, MG might be running that Cassidy, and that's where you have to watch to make sure your backline doesn't get sent to your respawn point a little bit prematurely.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to pay attention to that non-Colosseo. I mean, this map in general has always been very, very hard to, for that first fight, right? Obviously, that first fight is going to be a big deal to see who can come out on top, because that's really going to lead to give that team an edge. And obviously, we've seen previously with MG on that previous map, I mean, they've been able to get snowballed. I wouldn't say with relative ease, but I mean, that was just kind of very smooth. Right, that was a very smooth attack from or on Rialto. You kind of get rolled over that easily. It's a little bit rough, but now coming into Colosseo, you don't want that to happen, right? It's the same situation. You don't want to put yourself immediately, into an 80, 90 meter deficit, right? Because once you put yourself in that deficit, it's so hard to come back on push maps. I mean, as we know, push maps is one of the hardest to come back on simply when you are actually down that many meters, because you have to win so many fights in a row just to even get to 0 meters.
Yeah, it very much is just a game of momentum. And if teams do go a little bit too aggressively forward, they are immediately punished. But likewise, if you don't really have anything to see yourself through the next fight, you're also punished. So it does become a sort of question of, can you win the fight with what you've got? More importantly, can you restrain yourself with what you've got and hold on to have something for the next fight afterwards? But this is going to be something a little bit different, because we're seeing two different looks coming through from these teams. Sheer Cold are still veering towards this Rhine Rush, but MG are actually going to be going for the Winston. As a result, User is going to be on that Soldier and trying to push out so much damage, but Sheer Cold are going to have 3 Rhine charges and 3 Mei walls with no worry about counter strategies from MG.
I mean, we're going to have to see if MG can actually get that aggressive dive early, already dropping towards that Sojourn on the backside now. Durex just looking for that damage onto that Winston, trying to take down Theomatic as he jumps in, take that armor off before he jumps, but just kind of jumping from side to side. Sheer Cold decided to hold the W key, get that robot, get in that aggressive position, force that Winston jump from Theomatic, but he keeps taking so much damage. The Winston bubble actually committed early on his side, and the shield's still available from Erikek, so they're just going to keep holding this robot aggressively as the backside damage from QRX, just looking for that Sojourn. Now has to back up, avoid that Sojourn disruptor shot, and on the front side, they just keep pushing MG back. MG really not looking for the dive just yet, waiting for the Sojourn to get the one shot, but they can't find the kill. No headshot just yet onto a squishy of the backside, so they're just going to keep waiting the entire time. Hanzo or Sojourn, right? This is what we talked about with Colosseo. These first fights sometimes will last an incredible amount of time until the first pick, and there just isn't a headshot yet for either potential first pick hero, the Sojourn or that Hanzo. So now Erikek, a little bit disgruntled, decides to actually charge in forward. The Baptiste lamp actually committed to keep him alive. The window still available for him as well. Both support ultimates available. So is the overclock for the side of Juzo. So they're about to commit it on both sides. And now that first pick happens onto Katakomi towards that backside and finds QRX as well before any support ultimates can come through. But Muse to find 2 there through the Baptiste window. That damage, Muse with the right clicks has been amazing. But now with the Reaper, the Baptiste window or lamp keeps them alive in somehow, some way. Sheer Cold sustained.
Yeah, remember, Bab got a little bit of a buff, so you keep a little bit more of your health when you're sitting in that lamp. And people said, is it going to be able to really keep competition on Suzu importance in that fight? Yes, it is. Sheer Cold's health bars are able to stay standing long enough that even when SXJ moves into position to try to connect onto that backline, the Bab stays healthy. And Sheer Cold are able to win this fight and push the robot. However, now they have to worry about User coming in with overclock this time. And it's not going to be against the Hanzo to be able to keep pulling that Sojourn's position out with well-placed Sonic. The Cassidy is in there to try to keep SXJ and Theomatic from being able to push into the front line, but that means that User's position isn't spotted out until now. Blizzard comes out from Sheer Cold to make sure that the Sojourn is zoned off, and it's even going to be followed up by a Shatter. Sheer Cold absolutely dumpster the Sojourn showing up, and it's going to be a lot of ultimates, but they're still going to be able to keep the robot moving.
And the solo shatter almost entirely worth it there. I mean, it is worth it to take a Sojourn out that's overclocking. I mean, that takes down such an important ultimate for MG. I mean, they've been so reliant on that Sojourn to find value, and unfortunately for them, it's been traded back. Juzzo's been able to find those kills, but it's just immediately traded back by Sheer Cold's incredible willpower to stop the side of MG, and a high noon to zone over the top side here as well. I mean, they just keep funneling forward. However, they only have this Baptiste window for this fight, Mox.
Yeah, they will have Baptiste window, and that's why they're actually trying to push MG into taking the fight on this lane. Firebare comes out from MG so they can actually push into the dive, but there's the Amp Matrix. It comes straight through the middle of it, but it's taken down by a Fire Strike from Erikek. And as a result, MG, who are hoping to turn that around, create so much space with the Reaper ultimate, fall entirely short, and even use so many ultimates up trying to slow Sheer Cold down.
And this is the position that we talked about that's just going to be so bad to be in. I mean, 70 meters now. MG's going to have to win multiple fights back to even get into the positive, to even get a couple meters on the board. But Sheer Cold have been using their ultimates perfectly. Now they're against Yoham and his ultimate on the front side. They commit that ultimate as well. The Kitsune rush on the front side of that robot, but they're just immediately disengaged by Sheer Cold, who just back up, get the grenade with Theomatic, and they find the trade. However, they do lose Erikek, even though they committed that window. Juzzo finds Sucrax, and finally MG find a breath of fresh air.
The problem for MG is that they don't really have long to be able to turn this around. Right, Sheer Cold are coming into this next fight so close to so many ultimates, and MG are holding on to maybe a primal if they're lucky, and Fuse is able to find the cleave. Use is going to have that Deadeye to buy themselves a little bit more time, but this flank from SXJ has to come in big. The May block is there to make sure that Muse stays alive. The soundbar even invested from Sheer Cold as the Blizzard comes through, and they decide they want to get aggressive before MG has the time to pull the trigger first, and it works out in their favor.
And these are great bait plays from Sheer Cold. I'm not sure if they're intentional or not, but just to go towards the inside, then bait MG to come and fight them there, and then immediately get that Baptiste lamp and just counter MG's push. I mean, phenomenal team play from them to shut out the push from MG.
What it has done, however, is allow MG to come into this next fight still with their ultimate. We can see the Vanderhammer coming on through, pressuring out Erikek. The shield not going to be that long enough, and it forces Sucrax into using that lamp. And this is when User gets to move forward aggressively. The Deadeye comes on through from QRXU, but the damage has already been done. You don't need to buy time or space for your team if your team are already dead. And all it does is eat into the ult charge for the next fight that's there for Sheer Cold.
Yeah, a little bit of overconfidence from Sheer Cold there. They're going to have that Shatter Baptiste window coming up, like I mentioned, but SXJ with that Reaper ultimate. Let's see if he can actually get it off this time. Sheer Cold is doing a great job at kind of just disengaging it and taking out that Reaper with that Baptiste lamp, as well as the follow-through damage of a Fire Strike from Erikek, and they actually push forward against that Shatter Mox. I mean, what do they do? They're just waiting for it. They know Erikek has it, but here comes that bubble. Now the bubble's used. Shatter's going to be free. It just lands on the two members, but the Reaper ultimate on the backside from SXJ does find two, so they trade back support and DPS for support and DPS, but Erikek with the Fire Strike before the beat drop can actually land, and that's going to turn the tides here off of Erikek to find those Fire Strike kills, to find the Shatter. I mean, fantastic work from this Reinhardt, who has no counterpart.
Yeah, both teams go for the backline. You can actually see Erikek has one goal in mind for that Shatter, and it's to land it onto the Kiriko to stop the cleanse from coming on through. Likewise, SXJ has one goal in mind with the Death Blossom, and that's to connect it onto the Baptiste in the backline to make sure that the Reinhardt is not going to have the support needed. Unfortunately, without any supports for MG, Erikek still standing with that Lucio is able to keep Sheer Cold in play, and it's going to be a Deadeye coming through from Yuzo to try and put pressure onto Sheer Cold. The disengage is there, but the shield is not. It breaks. Erikek goes down, and QRXU is actually able to trade back with two. They're even dropping in the soundbar to invest, thinking they're going to be able to turn this fight around, and it's forcing MG to invest in turn. Kitsune Rush comes on through from the team, but Muse, not able to find space to be able to use that Death Blossom, decides to hold on to the ultimate and use it into this next fight. Because here's what I was talking about, Dustin. When you have the ultimates in the fight, great, you're going to need them. But what you're also going to need in push maps is ultimates for the next fight after. And that's what Sheer Cold is looking for.
Here's the high noon Baptiste window, and no May to counter the window either, so they just have to leave the fight entirely. The robot going to go back towards that middle of the map, the neutral area, and against all these ultimates. A Reaper ultimate now, actually, so they did commit 3 ults there. So MG, they're not in that bad of a spot here, right, Mox? I mean, they're going to have that Primal Rage that can potentially come back in here now, and they have the robot control yet again.
Yeah, they will have the Primal Rage, but what they don't have is a Reaper! SXJ rather, goes down. Sheer Cold now with a numbers advantage. Have to be careful so they don't lose the Reinhardt, and that's exactly what happens. Death Blossom comes on through from Muse to cover up for the absence of that tank and make sure that MG don't get the time to push into that backline until it's healed up to full. And as a result, Sheer Cold are still able to keep their members intact. They can look for a really fast regroup and still contest in this space that the Reinhardt is so happy to be able to fight in.
Some of these fights and ults are some of the most questionable engagements I've ever seen with that Reaper ultimate. I mean, some of these ults are just being thrown out and really giving MG an advantage to potentially come back in this series, because now, you know, the deficit they're in, Moxie, it's not that much, only 46 meters. They just have to win 2 fights here to come back now. And MG, they're going to have to keep backing up, however, with that high noon. Aerotech with that shatter is available, so they know that. Now they split off the Winston. He's totally alone with that Kariko, but he can't stay alive for much longer, and he doesn't have any help. The Kariko does teleport out of there, but they're going to have to keep backing up unless they want to get shattered, but they actually take down Aerotech, who was shattering into a Reaper ultimate with the Kitsune Rush. It was perfectly timed. The combination of XSJ and that Kitsune Rush gives MG a potential hope in this series.
Yeah, they'll be able to find themselves a little bit more distance to try and equalize what Sheer Cold have been able to accrue. The problem is there's a minute left, and they're only really going to be able to have a sound barrier to try to find that kill and look aggressively to connect onto one of these members of Sheer Cold, who are holding onto a sound barrier and creeping towards the Death Blossom of their own. They're waiting for the time to drop down onto this robot and push onto MG, but MG decides that they're going to dive into the backline first. There's the sound barrier, so no Squishy is going to be taken down by the Winston Cleave into the Reaper, and as a result, MG, that impact that they were looking to create, is entirely snuffed out.
Oh no, Shizzle's already dead. 23 seconds now. You don't have your cast. You don't have a main damage dealer now. Sheer Cold just hold the WG. 18 seconds left. MG commit towards the reset. They actually commit towards the reset. The robot's changing in the other direction, so Sheer Cold are actually taking the robot towards MG so they could touch easier, but now they finally know they finally realize what they're doing, so they stop the robot forward at a position that is favorable towards them, and they want to take a fight on this high ground because they know MG are going to have to push towards it, so they're just going to wait for this Winston to dive. Sheer Cold does have that Reaper ultimate as soon as they get on that robot, and unless it's somebody a little bit more mobile with some more HP, it's going to be tough for MG to actually sustain this fight, especially without any ultimate.
Yeah, especially because by MG not wanting to take the fight until now, they haven't built ultimate up to be able to contest when Sheer Cold decide to use theirs.
Whoa!
There's the Death Blossom to cover the objective, and MG with no choice but to try and keep touching, have no choice but to hold into it. Sheer Cold with the ultimate advantage, take the map, take the series, and continue on in the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, Sheer Cold, great job from them. I mean, I kind of was stuck in the BO3 mindset earlier, but now we're in the BO5 mindset, and they still win. Sheer Cold still comes out on top on Coliseum to actually continue this series, or to end the series now, versus MG. And we thought it was going to be a close series, and it kind of was, but eventually Sheer Cold found their footing. They kind of stopped the pushes of MG. They kind of stopped them, especially when they potentially came back into fights. They did do a little bit of troll in there. I mean, Mox, they did throw a little bit of fight sometimes for throwing out like a Reaper ult or two, but a good win for them, honestly, in this tournament so far in the bracket. I mean, just to go forward, it's going to be amazing for them. It's going to be a good feeling to just get the dub over MG today.
Yeah, I think for Sheer Cold especially, like, there's a lot of pressure coming into this tournament because Sheer Cold have had a lot of ups and downs in the world of Tier 2 Overwatch. And I think we're really hoping that they have that trajectory where they do get to just start to ascend a little bit further, right? These players have had the experience, they've had that knowledge of how to play at a Tier 2 level, but we were yet to really see them break into the scope of being talked about, like teams like EXO, or Young and Beautiful, or over towards NA side, things like Redbirds.
Redbirds, yeah.
Like, you really do want to just put yourself out there and find a name for yourself. And I think for Sheer Cold, getting the opportunity to be able to not just go up against contenders teams, but potentially go up against Overwatch League teams, is that opportunity for them to be able to push themselves a little bit further on for the echelon of Tier 2. And some of these players, like all of these players on this team, honestly, are ready for that climb. We saw them today. They had some really good, clean, clinical fights, and I can't wait to hear what exactly they're going to tell us, because we get a little bit of time to talk to one of the players, get to ask them what exactly is it like to be playing on the ever-shifting planes of meta, considering we just had a patch go through that might have had an impact on how these compositions shaped up today.
Yep, and that interview will be coming in just a second, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short break for that interview with Sheer Cold. See you guys in a bit. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Overwatch Pro AM qualifiers, and we are with our the coach of Shirako. We got Reggie with us today. How you doing, Reggie? Congrats on the win, man. What a great look for you guys to take the dub over MG today.
We have a friendly rivalry going on against them. So this, winning against them in the Pro AM Stage 2 after losing to them in the qualifier before, like last week, it felt really good.
Oh yeah, I bet. Well, I guess on that note, I mean, to come back and win the series over MG, did you guys make any adjustments, I guess, coming into this match, or was it just a matter of the meta kind of revolving around your guys' playstyle?
No. It was nothing to do with meta. I mean, I don't think meta is that clear yet. I'm not sure if it will be Brawl forever the next few weeks. I mean, the reason why we lost to Mind Goblin the last time was just stupid mistakes, and we ironed them out, and now we went into with more confidence. We knew we are a better team, and we focused up and we won.
So then, speaking about potential meta shifting, how, as a head coach, do you sort of approach the team knowing that we're playing with the potential of meta and patches coming through mid-tournament?
I mean, yeah, obviously that's not great to see as a coach, because I want to prepare ahead of time. I want to practice my comps I'm expecting to play. And this Rush Mira, we did not practice it for a long time. This is a very last few seconds matchup, and there was also this big Paris LAN. So obviously this was very little scrimming, but we still did our best. I think the meta way I just look what's strong, what can we play, what are our comfort heroes, and then I build around our strengths, and if we can, we also abuse the enemy weaknesses. But majority is just, let's play our game, we win with our heroes.
Well, and speaking of your game, I mean, is there any individual player you'd like to shout out for sheer cold for how they played in that series? I mean, I would say that everybody played well, but, you know, Katakomi played well. Lucio, do you have any specific player you'd like to talk about?
I mean, honestly, everyone was so great. Like even Icenorm, who did not play in this official now, like he has such a great impact in the team. But I mean, obviously, Quirksu is clicking all those heads. Sukrax with the insane flex support, who I think is sometimes overlooked because people always think, oh, just hit scan carrying. But we have insane back nine. And I think we also saw in the live stream today where Katakomi was telling the team, yo, I can land a boop, and then the team was like, yeah, let's go. And then we went for it, and it paid off. But also we have new tank additions, which I'm very happy about, because they're giving their best and they are putting up an insane performance with being incredibly rookies and not having any prior like great experience in contenders. So it's honestly everyone, but also even Muse. Like,
it's interesting that you say that a lot of these players on the team don't really have that competitive experience. Do you think that Pro-Am coming on through allows more opportunity for some of these players to potentially get picked up into contenders teams?
Yes, so I thought there was a very big shift when Overwatch 2 came out, that I mean, I really wanted the stagnation it breaks, and I wanted, after I came back from NA contenders into EU, I wanted to build a team that is a little bit developmental, a little bit, you know, new players, not so unknown. I wanted to make a new project that is going to be strong, and I think we're on the right way right now, so I'm very happy about that.
Oh, for sure. And Reggie, last question for you, man. When you guys, like, if you have the potential to play against the Overwatch teams, do you have a little bit of an interesting sidewinder of a question here for you, Reggie? Which Overwatch team would you want to play against in the Pro-Am? Yeah.
I mean, if I could choose, obviously London Spitfire, because they have the EU players.
Of course. And well, thank you guys for thank you for the interview, Reggie. I mean, it was awesome speaking to you, man. So thank you so much. Congratulations on the win, and good luck next round.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward.
Yeah, well, that was Reggie from the head coach of Team Sheer Cold, and what a fantastic series versus MG. They said, you know, come back in that series to actually take the win over MG when they took an L to them earlier, to come back and actually take it to them to get that W. Fantastic for them. And now potentially they'll have to go against Oblivion, who has an entire roster shuffle here, Max.
Yeah, but again, like you can see, just speaking to players, speaking to head coaches, how important Pro-Am is to be able to make sure that the esports scene just continues to grow and flourish. Already we can see a lot of players to keep our eye on. I cannot wait. And speaking of teams like EXO, who have had like those full roster shuffles, there is space now in those tier 2 teams for these players to get noticed and potentially picked up and grow even further in the scene. And I think one of those that we're going to see is this next matchup, because it's the sort of combination of players that we know in the scene and players who were really waiting for their big break to be able to get picked up. And this is definitely their time to shine. I am a little bit more skeptical for one team than others, simply because of the Cassidy buff at the moment, but I think it's still going to be a potentially close series, even regardless.
And speaking of which, yeah, we're going to that break to come back, and we got SR Peak Check versus Triple Esports, and we got a fan favorite coming up next, Samito the Rager. I mean, not Samito the Rager, sorry, Samito the Streamer. Okay, listen, I love my boy Samito. He's awesome, so we're going to have to see them next up, guys. We'll see you guys after a short break. When we come back, you're not going to want to miss the series between SR Peak Check and Triple Esports.